Welcome to Inspire Campfire, a podcast where ordinary people tell their stories of extraordinary adventure. These are campfire stories meant to inspire the rest of us to light the fire within, get outside, follow our dreams, and return to tell our own stories. Ready? Let's strike the match.
Welcome to the show. I am your host, Scott Wurzbacher, and I am super excited about today's episode for a number of reasons. First, we are going to complete the Triple Crown of hiking, which refers to the three major U.S. long-distance trails. You may recall on our first episode, I had the pleasure of talking with Josh Sutton, who thru-hiked the Appalachian Trail with his wife, Cassie, and their 5-year-old son. Then in episode 9, we spoke with Derek Wood, who hiked the Pacific Crest Trail. And today, we're going to complete the Triple Crown with the Continental Divide Trail, which is a 3,100-mile trail between Mexico and Canada. It follows the Continental Divide along the Rocky Mountains and passes through New Mexico, Colorado, Wyoming, Montana, and Idaho. Now, the second reason I'm so excited is we get to talk today with Jeff Wise, the president and CEO of Whitewater here in Charlotte. He's at the helm of the US National Whitewater Center, which has become a mecca for adventure in the Southeast, and it's one of the key attractions for our Charlotte region. Jeff not only leads a company focused on adventure, he's also a kayaker, a biker, backpacker, runner, and an outdoor enthusiast. Now, back in 2015, Jeff took a month out of his daily routine to mountain bike the length of the Continental Divide Trail. And today, he's going to share some of that story with us. Jeff, welcome to the campfire.
Thanks. Good to be here.
So I have to you and I had some really fun conversation right before we got started, and I learned something that's pretty cool. And so what you find is when one door closes, the other one opens. And so the Triple Crown of hiking is the Appalachian Trail, the Pacific Crest Trail, and the Continental Divide Trail. But you let me know that there's something called bike packing, and that there's actually a Triple Crown in bike packing. And so what we learned here is that the Continental Divide Trail, the Colorado Trail, and the Arizona Trail makes the Triple Crown of bike packing. So you've already opened another door for me, because we're going to have to continue our journey by covering those trails as well.
Yeah, the AT and the PCT do not allow bikes for obvious and very good reasons, and so they would. Yeah, otherwise that would probably be the Triple Crown for bike packing. So I'm making this up as I go, but I'm trying to think of why those are the three Triple Crown for bike packing. Obviously, for the Continental Divide, that's the beast, but the AZT and the Colorado are long, but by no means, I think I think Arizona is 7 something and Colorado is 5 something. So they're much shorter, but I'll tell you, I've done the Colorado, I've not done Arizona. Colorado was single-handedly, mile for mile, the hardest bike packing I've ever done in my life by a factor of several. I was probably biking, I don't even want to say, but at least 50% of the time.
Oh, man. Well, it sounds like, Jeff, we might have a couple of podcast episodes here. So let's jump to the Continental Divide Trail and finish that first leg of the hiking Triple Crown. Can you kind of just give us an overview of the Continental Divide Trail?
Yeah. So clarification, the actual Continental Divide Trail is an established pathway. What I did was the what's known as, quite honestly, the Continental, the Tour Divide, which was a race, and it incorporates the Continental Divide Trail at various locations.
Yeah.
So the actual tour, the tour route actually starts in Banff and ends at Antelope Wells. And so it is either parallel at all points or actually incorporating the Continental. And there are times you're on the Continental where you're specifically on it. So it's a real mix. And that makes it actually kind of interesting. And you go through some absolutely stunningly gorgeous places. But, you spend about 2 days on the bike from Banff before you hit the Montana, the U.S. border in Montana at Roosevelt, I believe it is.
Okay.
It's pretty cool. I went across and I came into the U.S. at about 1 o'clock in the morning on my bike, and there's nobody else there. And the guys at the border, I'm thinking, well, they'll just let me on through. They're not going to really look at me like anything, but they still check you. They still treat you just like you would otherwise at 1 o'clock on a whatever morning that was. So it was a pretty cool, weird, ethereal experience going through that.
Yeah, that's wild. You're essentially going through customs during a mountain bike race.
It is, and there were a couple other riders around me, but because we were still early, we were the second day in, so people were still a little more compressed.
Wow. So okay, so Montana. You start in Montana, and
Start in Banff. So you're about 200 and what was that? You're just a little over 200 miles in Canada before you hit the U.S. border. So you hit that about, I think the first day I got to. Boy, it was nasty. It was raining. Everybody was shearing derailleurs in the mud. It was a nightmare. And I got to about mile 145 that first night, absolutely caked in mud, but no derailleurs lost or anything like that. I busted 2 spokes about 2 miles, about 2 hours out of Banff, and wasn't able to get those fixed until we hit town in Whitefish, Montana, which if you've never been to Whitefish and you're into the outdoors, go to Whitefish. I was only there for a few hours getting my wheels fixed, but it's a beautiful place.
Yeah, I have actually been there. That is a cool little town.
That's a place to be.
So, but the U.S. portion starts in Montana, and so can you kind of take us through sort of what the trail looks like, the terrain from there to Mexico?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question, and I'll be honest, I think it's one of the best parts of any story related to this. I mean, going through Montana blows your mind because you start out and you're just thinking, this is maybe some of the prettiest stuff I've ever seen. And as you're riding, and that's the beauty of riding versus backpacking, they each have obviously their relative merits, but with riding, the context happens quicker. And, you'll be in the morning thinking, I've never seen anything this gorgeous. But in the afternoon, 100 miles later, you're in a completely different setting, and you're thinking, wait a minute, this is prettier than what I just saw. Yeah. The next day, this is prettier than what it changes, but it's absolutely stunning. And you're going through Butte, Helena, you're staying along the whole more of the western portion and shooting straight down Montana, heading towards Wyoming. And so you're in Montana for several days. You actually leave Montana and go into Idaho for just a quick snip.
Okay.
Before you click over into Wyoming, and you go into Yellowstone and ride right down the highway there going into Jackson, and I'm blanking on it all of a sudden. I'll think of it in a minute. But so you go from one place to another thinking it can't get any better. And I'm not saying it truly is better, but it just keeps blowing your mind how gorgeous it is. And so by the time you get into Colorado, you're thinking, how does it get any better? And then darn it, if Colorado doesn't keep up and just add something, and in all of Colorado is so different. You've got that northern portion of Colorado that looks very different than the San Juans and so forth. And then by the time you get into to New Mexico, it just keeps giving, and it blows your mind. The only problem is you're in a race. You don't really slow down to appreciate.
Right.
It's go, go, go. But you're on the bike, so you're constantly, absorbing it and picking it up. And you're basically in a race where you're doing a sight tour. I mean, it's you're seeing your country, and this is not some jingoistic patriotic thing, but it gave me a context for the country that nothing else ever could, because you saw it all in 20 days and you understood the linkage of all of it. And that's irreplaceable. I'll never forget that.
Yeah, I mean the terrain I mean, especially out west, it's just so awe-inspiring. In fact, the word awe is something that we talk about a lot on this podcast. And I was just kind of thinking, I know you were in a race, and so I'm sure you were incredibly focused about just kind of getting from one point to the next. But how did you blend that sort of, making sure that you have the time to take in what you're experiencing and having sort of those awe moments blended with the focus of, being in a race?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. I mean, it was interesting. a really weird thing happened as soon as I finished. Every morning I woke up for several weeks, there was almost an anxiety that, I got to go, you got to
Mhm.
move, you just had to keep pushing. And that was going on for those 20 days. So you never absorbed anything more than for a quick moment. I mean, I remember sitting there, I ate a lot of Don Miguel frozen burritos. Those were pound for pound, you cannot get more fat and calories. And it's a phenomenal, those are, and they're nice little tubes that fit everywhere. And so, you would sit there and you would laugh. I mean, you would be by yourself. 98% of it is solo, meaning,
Mhm.
you may get into a restaurant where you see somebody or when you come into town, but, you're not allowed to draft or do anything like that. So it's a solo event.
Yeah.
And so you're in your own mind and you're enjoying the scenery, but you also are enjoying the suck. I mean, the suck is there. It
It
is it
is.
is it is present at every moment, but it is also balanced out by laughing at the suck and also going, man, I'll never see this again in this moment, and you better enjoy it. So there's a blend there that your brain is very conscious of, and it's what keeps you going because it's never the suck doesn't suck that long. That the grandeur is going to become suck. There's pain, there's mechanicals, there's always something to keep you moving.
Yeah. So, I think that's come up on this podcast before with some other folks that have done some things like mountain climbing and, the suffering. It's real. You call it the suck. It is. Why do we put ourselves through those? Why do we seek out the suck?
I, I'm probably the worst person to ask because I'm going to sound like a jerk with this statement. I think it's because we have engineered all the suck out of our life on a daily
Mm,
basis.
mm,
These phones, these computers, I mean, everything about our lives is to, make our lives, less sucky. There's a whole nother conversation that goes on that says they created a different suck for us, but that's a different conversation. But we have engineered, really all activity out of our lives. I mean, we have been we don't starve anymore. Ukraine is only a reminder to us that life is fragile and life is tough. But we are so fortunate that we have removed so much of that. I think we know that we grow through challenge. And so if we're not getting challenged, through the daily existence of life, we're going to reach out and seek it in another way. We have to program it now because, we're not living on a survival basis for most of us. And that's a good thing. I'm not saying that's negative, but if we're only going to grow through challenge, which the only way I know that anything grows is why we go, lift a weight or go run, do whatever is to stress our systems. We have to go find these things. So we program it, and we see it at the Whitewater Center every day. My favorite expression is when people say, "Can you teach me to go backpacking?" I'm like, "Do you know how to walk?" People just feel, we now have to program all of these experiences in because it's not as natural as it used to be. So I think we need the suck. We just have all, but we also need that that time to let the suck absorb so that we can grow from the suck. I mean, go back to lifting weights. If you go lift, 24 hours a day, you never give it the chance to come back. You've got to let everything repair after you've broken it down.
yeah. No, I mean, really, really good wisdom there. I'm curious that, there's a lot of different challenges that you could have chosen. Why did you pick this particular challenge for you?
It was timing. I've always, you said you listed things that I was going to say kayak or bike, or, I'm not marginal at any of those things. I'm terrible at all of them. And because I'm not very good at them, I kind of, try a bunch of different things and then, but I embrace them and I stick with them because I love them, but I'm not any good at them. And so, biking, the one thing that I am maybe, somewhat average at is being able to stay on a bike for a long time.
Okay.
I'm not fast. I'm not powerful. I'm not anything, but, I'll stay on a bike. But also being very frank, it is a very efficient way to see the world.
Mhm.
I've been able to go. circumnavigated on a bike Cuba. I mean, I want, I've been everywhere on a bike because it's a great way to slowly see a lot. If I'm hiking and backpacking, I'm not covering as much,
Right.
and I tend to be more remote. The bike takes you from remote into urban, and I like that mixture. I like being able to interact with people. Cuba's the best example. I mean, you were able to interact with people, but I wasn't in tourist areas, just like on the Tour Divide. You're remote, but you also get to come in and see. I'll probably never be in Helena, Montana ever again, but now I understand. That's a pretty cool capital. It's a neat place.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think what's cool about it is like you think about the Appalachian Trail and the Pacific Crest Trail, like these guys that did the through hiking. I mean, they're doing this in months, 4 to 6 to 7 months, and you covered this whole thing in 21 days. So that's pretty efficient. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, I've since I was a kid, I've been trying to figure out how to do the AT, and the realization is, I'm sorry, but when you're 12 years old, you can't go disappear for 6 months.
Right.
And then, college and law school and work, you don't get to go take 4 months
Yeah.
away from responsibilities for a lot of us. And so I'm trying to figure out when that happens. And quite frankly, the AT for me has been, probably at retirement.
Yeah.
And the problem is I'll be, physically incapable of anything other, probably can't even hold my bowels together at that point.
No, you won't. You're going to do it. Maybe I'll come with you because I'd love to do that as well.
I'm telling you, I do not fathom how anybody could do that with a 5-year-old. The guys that I do hike with and bike with act like 5-year-olds, but they can at least, move. I can't fathom a 5-year-old being able to move down that trail like that.
Yeah. Well, it's great. I mean, episode 1, you can hear the story, but the thing is, I'm sure a lot of people can't fathom what you did in the 21 days on the Continental Divide Trail. I'd love to hear if maybe you could share like some of your favorite moments on that trip, and then maybe share some of the specific suck.
Yeah. Man, I mean, seriously, if we talked for 3 hours, and I do love the sound of my own voice, but recounting this story, that trip in my head happens all the time. I try not to share it because I don't want to bore people, and so you asking me to talk about it is, that's a rare thing and certainly enjoyable for me because it is in my head all the time.
Yeah.
Because it is constantly a context for life for me. Because at the end of the day, everything, it's sports, it's everything is an analogy to how we live our lives. And so, they're very vivid to me. I remember the first day, there were 150 people starting the race. And this is the stupidest thing you'll ever see from human beings. We were about to go, essentially 3,000 miles, over, I was shooting for 21 days. And everybody hauls tail out of there at 18 miles an hour at breakneck speed.
Mm-hmm.
Why? I mean, we were acting like, we were racing, 100 miles or 50 miles, and I was laughing at it. Probably 2 hours in. I mean, I'm probably at 80% heart rate, trying to just haul for no good logic. Kicked up a big rock that ran through the front tire, through the spokes, and it kicked it through the drivetrain and out the back, and so I broke the spokes. And so 2 hours in, I've already got a mechanical, and it jammed up the derailleur. I had to fix all that, and probably 4 or 5 hours later, with a pretty compromised drivetrain and rear wheel, climbing several thousand feet that day, coming back down. It was cold, it was raining. And I remember just kind of, I pulled into a C-store at about mile 110.
Okay.
And cold, really cold. And I remember trying to heat up by the roller food. It created heat off of it. And I remember going, this is cool. And you're like, why? What is cool about this?
Yeah.
And I just was laughing. And I was by myself heading towards a little town called Sparlina, and in Canada. It was a logging town. And, you would just start singing to yourself because the absurdity of what was going on was cool. And you went, there's no other way. I'm filthy dirty. I'm freezing cold. I'm starving. And I got, almost 3,000 miles more of this. And, what have I signed up for? I had no idea, but you got a pretty quick understanding of it within that first day. And then you woke up, you went about it the same, the next day you start all over again and you do it again. And the whole goal was don't physically break down and don't mechanically break down
Mhm.
and mentally. But the real issue, quite honestly, was how much luck factors in. I mean, I didn't have any physical problem. I mean, I had a couple little things here and there, but nothing that would stop you. Most of it revolving around my backside. The first 3 or 4 days, you wear a pretty good hole in your
Sure.
in the sits bone area. But you know, it at the end of the day, if you don't realize how much luck factors into that, you're an idiot. And that's where, to the point of the podcast, what I am so aware of is that the Tour Divide for me is life. And what I mean by that is, everything that has happened to me is a product of two things. It is a product of perseverance and luck. And that's all life is. If you don't push and if you don't drive, you're not going anywhere. But if you also don't understand how much where you are is a factor of fortune, circumstances, luck, whatever term you want to use, added to your persistence and your determination and your effort and
Mhm.
your your use of your brain and your mental acuity, whatever you want to call it. But it's not special. There's nothing special about it. It's just an awareness that just keep your head down, keep pushing, and know that pardon my French, but shit's coming your way,
Yeah.
and you better figure out how to handle it because shit's coming. And when it hits, relax and handle it. And
Yeah.
that's going to happen when COVID hits. That's going to happen when stuff at work, when life, family stuff hits. It's fine. It's expected. If you don't expect it, then you're a moron because it's coming, and you've asked for it because you live this life we live. And I love being in expedition behavior teaches you everything about life.
Yeah. I mean, I love that you said that it's nothing special. And it's interesting because I'm listening to you earlier talk about how, I love kayaking, I love biking, I love backpacking, but I'm not very good at any of them. You're being modest, by the way, but, but, but I
Now,
think it's,
ask anybody at work. They will tell you that the fact that I use at the end of anything with me, they go, he sucks. He's terrible.
but what I was thinking about when you were saying those things is, okay, maybe, but you're still showing up. And that's what you're talking about with the perseverance. You said, perseverance and luck. And to me, like what I'm hearing you say is you got to show up. And that is what this podcast is about. It's about ordinary people telling their extraordinary stories of adventure. And those extraordinary adventures only happen when you show up.
Engage. I think I'm going to use your words of show up, but we say it all the daggum time. I tell everybody at work, I tell everybody in my, back in my house, I'm like, guys, nothing happens until you get up and go.
Yeah.
And I'm telling you now, we watch it every single day. Everything is pushing people. The fear of failure is causing people to sit on the couch. It's okay to suck. You are going to suck. And we're trying to tell everybody that they're supposed to be special. And the answer is, there's 8 billion people on this planet. We're not special. We got to stop that mess. What you are is capable of creating value. And all that means is get up and get in the game and try. And I promise you that even if you're not that important to your team, you're important to yourself because you got up and you made something happen. Because the alternative of sitting around and wringing your hands and going, "Oh, woe is me," that's no life. That's not life. That's pathetic and it sucks. So get up and go and let the adventure happen and be okay with the fact that it's going to fail and laugh at the failure and embrace the failure and say, you know what? That didn't define me. The only thing that'll define you in a way I think that you should be uncomfortable with is failing to try.
Yeah. I love it. So one thing I want to kind of touch on is that fear of failure. because I think we all experience it, and the beauty is in pushing past it. But for this particular trip, this race that you did, what were some of the like resistance points that you experienced that maybe tried to get in the way? Obviously they didn't because you did it, but like what were some of the fears, doubts that you sort of experienced that you had to overcome in order to even make the trip happen?
One, that's a great question, and I don't know that it's kind of linear. I don't want to say, this was epochal or this was the one that really stood out, because they're all out there. They're little things. And the way that I decided to do this, I remember watching a documentary on the race, and I remember thinking, that's insane. And 5 minutes later, I was actually on my trainer watching it, and I went, okay, well, could I do that? And I thought about it, and I went, that's a pretty good life. If it wound up taking me 20 days, and I said, if I can spend 3 weeks away from work, and every day all I have to do is get up and ride my bike, that's a pretty good gig. And so I said, let's go try it. I did, I talked to this one guy up in Banff who was with a bike shop.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know what I was getting into. I mean, there's no research available on it, or not no, but there's minimal available. I didn't know, what type of bike to bring. I didn't know anything. And so you're looking at pictures, trying to figure out what people are doing and how they're approaching it. So I went into it completely ill-equipped. The only thing I had was I'd suffered a bunch in life, meaning it's not, I'd done, Ironmans, I'd done marathons, I'd done all that stuff where I said, hey, just keep your head down and go.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, I can do that. And that's that piece I had the confidence in. I was concerned about, there's wildlife. There's one of the racers that year saw a mountain lion. I saw him in the subway in Pinedale. And he said, yeah, I saw, a mountain lion last night. We saw grizzly, we saw, black bear. I mean, there's the year before a guy was killed coming, a truck came around a corner and they hit each other head on and the guy was killed. I mean, there's bad stuff being out remote, and that remote, you're days away from anything. And then food and water and all that, those logistics things, you got to be able to manage. I'm not, all my friends will be the first to tell you I'm the least organized OCD guy you'll ever see. But that is, I compensate for not being overly analytical, or that's not the right way to say it, but overly organized, by being very relaxed and letting it go. I adjust. I know how to say, okay, shit. Now what do I do? And I've done that so many times, and I always figure it out. A lot of luck. But I think that in hindsight, what I would tell you was mentally, when you're in that zone where you're like, this is getting rough. Mm-hmm. The one thing I will tell you that I've seen, and I think this is true for all of humankind, the suck will leave. It's temporary. You got to get through. If it's 10 minutes, if it's an hour, if it's 24 hours, when you're in a bad place, just let it go. It'll go away. And not because you do nothing. You got to keep pushing, but you'll push through it. You always do. And if you know that, then you'll never quit. And I do not, get me wrong. There are many times, where I'll be sitting there, in a rough moment thinking, boy, it would be nice to be with the kids and Ashley, on the back porch, eating with them right now. And you're like, yep, that's fine. You got that in 20 days. Shut up, go. So yeah, there's some low moments, but they last very, very short period of time. And the payoffs are monumental. So it's what life is. You can't enjoy the great without having those tough times.
I'm hearing this too shall pass kind of attitude.
Yeah. And that's the beauty of these artificial, challenges we put in front of ourselves through adventure. Mm-hmm. Those are choices. We put ourselves out there on purpose. And do not get me wrong, the beauty, the smiles, all that stuff. They're awesome, but the true value is how you experience life, because I've done it with some of my best travel mates, where we've looked over at each other where it's getting really ugly, and we smile at each other and we go, now it's about to get real fun.
Yeah.
Because watch everybody else start to fall apart. This is your chance to go.
Yeah.
Now we watch how life works.
Yeah. Hey, I want to just go a little deeper on something I heard you say that I thought was really interesting. You called it an artificial challenge. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Well, yeah. What I mean is, I could have stayed on the couch.
Yep.
I didn't need to go to Banff
Yep.
and set out to do this. All those were real challenges, but I programmed, maybe is a better way to do it. I didn't, it's not, that survival I did it to myself.
Yeah.
It was maybe I should say it was voluntary.
Yeah.
And so they're not the challenges that, and I'm going to sound really rough with this, but I'm so sick of everybody looking and saying, COVID is causing all this stress. And I'm like, yeah, guys, because we haven't stressed ourselves enough to know that this too shall pass.
Yeah.
COVID, everybody's like, okay, giving context, like, yeah, guys, and there's going to be another one coming. I don't know if it's COVID, but stuff's going to keep kicking us right in the whats. And I'm shocked that people think that's not the case. And so I think, when you're 7 years old and you have to stand up at the plate and, strike out, with 2 men on in the bottom of the seventh, that's failure in your mind, but that's what toughened you, and it prepared you for the next thing. And so whether that's at baseball or whether it's, on the Continental Divide, we need to experience these things, and we've got to stop sheltering ourselves and thinking that life never has challenges.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's a perfect lead in, because we talked about it a little bit before we hit record. Challenge is how you grow. So whether it's artificial or it's voluntary, we create these challenges so that we can grow. And so I'm curious, for this adventure, how did Jeff change? How were you different after the race than you were before you started?
I was 14 pounds lighter. I don't want to disappoint you with this statement, but everything is a continuum.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that I came back in any way profoundly changed, but it massively reinforced my awareness and my understanding that the more we push and achieve the things that we want to achieve, the more there is satisfaction in life. And it's not because I did, whatever, 2,750 something miles, whatever. That's not, that's cool. I love it. That's, that your mind wraps around it and you go, that's kind of cool. That's not the point. The point was that I showed up every day and I got the job done and I committed to it. And I keep seeing evidence of that, and everything that I experience is that's all it takes. We're not, none of us are special. We just got to show up. And so it just reinforced that for me. It didn't profoundly change me. It's a reference point when I scratch my head and I go, why do we think this is so tough? I go, well, it's not as tough as, this, that, or the other. I've experienced tougher things in my life, and this is, and those passed, and so will this. So that's the change, but that's an accretive or cumulative thing more than some, sort of apocalyptic thing, if that makes sense.
Well, what do you think if the reverse had happened? If you had chosen not to do this trip, what do you think the result would have been?
I would have done something else.
I'm doing
you would
something.
have filled it with something else.
I love it.
You would have. I'm not saying I'll only speak for myself on this. I fill a vacuum, and anytime there's a vacuum where I know that I'm getting soft, I go kick myself in the butt. And I, about every X, I go, yeah, I've been sitting in this chair too long. And don't get me wrong, work, the kids, the dogs, we all keep each other, challenged at times. But, I need to go out and get my butt kicked. And so I'd have done something else with it.
So, I heard you say vacuum, but what I think about it as, essentially a voice inside us that calls us to adventure. And I'm curious, does that voice call to you?
Yeah, and I'm trying to argue. I'm such a contrarian. I want to argue with you. I don't think I can.
Let's do it.
No, I think that's exactly what it is. There is some sequencing that happens. Yeah, when I got back from the Continental Divide, I was ready to relax for a little bit, but
Yeah.
I mean, I was back on that bike as quickly as I could because I want to keep going. I want more. I want more. And I try to be aware. I mean, is it like some kind of addiction? No, no, it's really not. I mean, I'm not, it's not adrenaline because that's not it. I'm a wimp, man. When something really scary's happening, I'm seeking shelter, baby. I'm like I said, I can do one thing and one thing only, and that's just, exist and survive. And so I do think that there is something in you that says it's time to get up and go again. And I'll say this, it is a continuum. I love going to work every day, among other things, because I'm challenged here every day. The people here push me. We push ourselves, and it's the product, it's the idea, it's the whole point of why Whitewater exists, and that is to promote that engaged lifestyle. We don't care what the format is. I don't care whether you're, you know, kayaking or biking or climbing or listening to some great music. Just get up and engage with yourself, engage with other people, but please, please, please push yourself to get out. And that's all. We're just trying to facilitate that.
So, and I love that you kind of pivoted to whitewater, because I did want to just take a few minutes to talk about that. You've got a pretty extensive career. You've been in law, you've been in the healthcare business. You've got an extensive like entrepreneurial history. And then there's a moment in your life when the Whitewater Center became something that was an opportunity for you. And I'm curious. I mean, that's a business that's centered around adventure. And so I'm curious how that call to adventure played into that transition for you into what is now the US National Whitewater Center here in Charlotte.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I'm not sure I've thought about it. This is better than psychotherapy, dude.
I love it.
You're asking me questions, and I'm always in my own head. I'm not smart enough to think these things through. Um, I will tell you. I think you're hitting on what I'm really realizing, and that is the subject matter is not important. It is more about the why behind this. And so, as with my kids, I'm doing it now, and I'm trying to understand how they see things and why they do what they do, and trying to relate to it. And what I think I know is that whether my parents did it to me, whether the society, whatever it was, we were curious. We wanted to engage. We were out and about, and we were exploring. And don't get me wrong, I grew up in Charlotte. I mean, come on, we had some woods behind our house in Eastover. I'm not sitting here saying I lived in the woods of of Appalachia or anything, but we spent our time there and we did all that. But it was because we were always, we were intellectually curious, we were physically curious, we were always engaging, and we were pushing because we wanted more. And we knew that the stimulus came from within. I think today the stimulus is so much out of that damn camera, phone, device, the computer. We're seeking stimulus in the wrong places, in my opinion. So what I would tell you is that for me, and I say this all the time to people that think they want to come work at the Whitewater Center, I say, guys, just because we have kayaking or whitewater paddling or climbing, that's not why this place is cool to work. That goes away in 5 minutes. I love riding my bike right outside the trails. That's not why I work here. I work here because every day we push each other and we challenge each other to grow, and we try new things. We try to get out of our comfort zone, whether that's on a bike, whether that's on a new business model, whether that's on taking on a new line of business, whether that's trying to constantly push ourselves out of our comfort zone. The subject matter does not matter, whether it's kayaking or whether it's the legal profession or whether it's, I don't want to tell you how many goofy spreadsheets I've got here we're looking at acquiring this little company. That's fun for me. It's exciting. There's risk, there's reward, it could blow up on us, all that stuff but it keeps you alive. And so it's not the biking. It's not, that's just one form of stimuli. It's anything that keeps you moving and growing and being engaged. And so I think that, my drug of choice, happens to have, more outdoor to it. But and this is going to sound so hokey, but adventure does not just come from, the woods. The adventure comes from the unknown and getting yourself out of that comfort zone. And, my adventure today will be, deciding whether we're going to buy this company or not. We got to make our decision today and make an offer. That's adventurous. We're going into some uncharted territory. And man, I love the people I get to do it with. I love, the fact that if we do fail, we'll learn from it. And as long as we survive that, that failure, we're fine. And I'm learning that you survive things that you never thought you would. And you do that by putting yourself in a vulnerable position. So don't kill yourself.
It's beautiful. And I just want to tell you, I know you hear this all the time, but Whitewater Center is just such a special place that y'all have created. And it's, I've got listeners many that are from Charlotte, but we also have listeners all around the world. And, it's a destination that people come to Charlotte for. And it's such an amazing place. And, to have been here when it opened and to see what it's become today, it's really pretty amazing. And I'd just love to just see if there's anything that you want to share with our listeners about anything that's going on at the Whitewater Center now.
No, thanks. I'll say this. Two things. One, when people do say to us, man, the Whitewater Center has been really successful, one, I'm like, well, thank you. And I appreciate that's the perspective that people have. What I always do is, it's that self-awareness we talk about. I'm like, guys, it's not genius. And don't get me wrong. The team here that has been here, for a long time, and the folks that have been in and out of here, have worked remarkably hard. It's not to diminish that, but it's back to why your whole podcast exists. We are genetically coded to get outside. This is not a complicated business model. The only thing we have to do is make it more accessible. That's all Whitewater does. And so what you'll see going forward is we've got 2 new outposts that are going to go live here in about a week. We've got a new outpost down in Pisgah. You'll hear all about when you see the announcement through in the next week. We've also got an outpost down in the Francis Marion National Forest down near Charleston. We also are probably several months later, but we've got a new outpost also up near, we call it Grayson. It's Grayson County in Southwest Virginia. We cheat. We said, all right, instead of, bringing the water to the horse, which was sort of the Charlotte model, we're going to go now and say, we know where these phenomenal outdoor assets. Grayson County, Virginia is one of the best examples. You've got the AT going through there. You've got the Virginia Creeper. If you've never been to Grayson Highlands State Park, you have missed some of the best, on the whole planet, man. It is knock you dead gorgeous. And so we've got a 122-acre tract that we have there with some cabins that are from 1860 that will blow your mind. But the fly fishing, the climbing, the paddling there, all of that is beyond first rate, and it's pretty remote. That's the beauty of it. There's not a whole lot going on in terms of development up there. We love that. We can kind of hide, and so those are 3 neat new things. So that what we're trying to do is create more points of engagement, create more opportunities for people to make it a little easier for them to play.
Oh, that's amazing. I love it. Grayson Highlands is a place I was planning to go actually just a couple of short weeks ago. So I'm excited to hear you guys have some things going on out there because I didn't actually make it. So now I have even more reason to go.
That's, if you want to cheat, if you want to get anybody, it's like giving them, heroin, crack, whatever this drug is we're all on. it's the highball of all that stuff, right? All wrapped up into, it's not that big of a state park, but my gosh, I mean, everybody I bring there for the first time, if they've not really been backpacking, it's the easiest place. And you ask all your AT through hikers where they're, what they were most impressed with on that whole stretch. I usually hear the Whites, and then I also hear Grayson Highlands.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's on my list for sure. I can't wait to get there. Jeff, for folks that are, maybe experiencing that call to adventure, but giving in to the doubt and the resistance, what advice do you have for people that are, maybe struggling to answer that call?
I mean, I'm such an analytical person on this kind of stuff. My first answer probably is, asking them what's causing their hesitancy.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's the discomfort, it's the not knowing. I was kind of mean to my wife this morning. I was recommending that she and my son go fishing tomorrow and the next 2 days. And, she gave me the reason she couldn't. And I said, you got to push through that. That's an excuse. And she said, but it's a legitimate excuse. And I said, well, what do you want to do? What's your real goal here? And what I was trying to convey to her was it wasn't about the choice between fishing and, taking care of a responsibility back here. It was a choice between, do you want to go and have that growth moment, or do you want to go take care of a very important responsibility?
Sure.
But if you always let those very important responsibilities get in the way, then you're not going to be able to handle those very important responsibilities the way you want to. There's a balance. Do not, get me wrong. I will tell you a pet peeve in life I have is this expression of work-life balance. It's the stupidest darn concept anybody has ever said, and I wish to heck everybody would say stop. Life is a balance. Work is simply an element of life.
Yeah.
So if you don't have, your family in there, if you don't have your play, if you don't have your whatever you want to call it, your education, your research, your silly time, all that's what you're balancing. But that's not measured against life. That's just life. And so I think what I'm trying to say to you is anybody that's telling you that they're hesitant, they're not. They need to add to the balance. Go do these things that are going to get you uncomfortable. And I promise you, he's one of my best friends, and I'll call him out in case he ever hears this. My buddy Boswell, we call him Boz. He always, gets in the gnar and he starts looking at me. He's going, "This is sucking." And then that night, we're sitting around the fire. He looks at me and goes, "God, this is freaking awesome." And I'm like, you always do this. Yeah. You express your frustration and then you express your elation. You know that one comes with the other. And he laughs. He's like, "I know. I just want to bitch about it."
I love it. Oh, I love it. Okay. So just to kind of wrap up here, 2 questions I ask everybody that comes on the podcast, because Jeff, they're going to make a movie about you and your life and all of your adventures. And I want to know who the Hollywood actor is going to be that's going to play you in your movie.
If they make a movie about my life, we truly have gotten to where there's no content left to create. I want to focus on aesthetic appeal because, it would enhance, one of my other greatest weaknesses. But I'm going to go with, and this guy's not a good looking man except in a certain way, and that's Danny McBride.
Danny McBride. Okay.
Do you know who Danny is?
I'm having a hard time placing him. What is he in?
So I'm currently watching the Mighty Gemstones.
Okay. Yeah. The name's familiar.
He's from North Carolina, but
cool.
Here's why I'd pick him. I love the fact that he's an idiot and he has such little self-awareness, but he always comes out on the right side of things.
Yeah.
Life always works out. He always gets in the what, but he always puts himself in it, but he always seems to come out of it okay, despite all his failings and his inadequacies. He's such a moron. And so I'm like, yeah, that's kind of me.
Danny McBride.
He's an idiot.
So what would the name of your movie be?
Man, I wish I had more time on this one because I would really come up with something that I would like to say. I think it would be, I don't know why I'm going to say this. And I'm like, I don't know what this means. I think it's going to be called This Is It.
This is it.
Nothing more, nothing less.
Yeah.
This is it.
I love that.
I don't know where that came from, but this is it.
I love it. This Is It, starring Danny McBride. It's going to be great.
My kids would tell you that in my greatest day, I don't look as good as Danny does in the Righteous Gemstones. You go, as soon as we're done, go pull him up. You'll recognize him. He and his writing cohorts and so forth, they're all from North Carolina. They're really talented and they're very exceptionally intelligent, but the characters and the content they create are idiots.
I love it. Well, Jeff, I really, really appreciate your time today. For those listening, I hope that you've been inspired today as much as I have. I hope that Jeff's story has encouraged you to listen to the voice inside that calls you to adventure, because we want to hear your story next. If you have a story to tell or you need a nudge to create one, please send me an email. We'd also appreciate it if you'd help us spread the word by leaving a review and sharing or tagging Inspire Campfire in your social media. And until next time, I want to encourage you to get outside. Thank you for listening. Jeff Wise, thank you so much for being here today.
It was awesome. Love this.